what belting high notes really feels like, and why is belting difficult for you. You see, a while ago, I've made a video on how to belt high notes without strain, and I literally revealed to you the secret in that video. So if you still haven't watched that video, go ahead, click that video in the card and go and watch that video first, because that video is unique, but it is still more foundational, it is still easier to understand. Today, I'm going much deeper, and if you haven't watched the previous video, you might not understand today's video exactly, because I'm going like really deep today into the topic about belting. So this is going to be really exciting for you. So a lot of the times we see famous singers belting high notes in their live performances, and then we love what we saw, so we try to imitate them, right? We open up YouTube and then we search, oh, Bruno Mars belting high notes, Shawn Mendes belting high notes, Ariana Grande belting high notes, and then we get so excited and we watch a live performance and then we try to imitate what they're doing. But because we don't really understand what is really going on with the singer's voice when he or she is belting out those high notes, especially during what I call a live performance setup. We often think that belting high notes is something that is very forward and outwards, right? This is the perception that we get, because when we hear the singer belt, oh, it sounds very forward, very loud, right? But you see, it is exactly the reverse. Now let me explain what I mean. You see, when we are singing live, there are mics and huge ass speakers involved, especially for things like a concert, for like big stages that those famous singers they sing in. And a lot of time, why those belted high notes sound so loud is because there are these speakers to amplify the sound. So a lot of the times we try to imitate that loud sound that we are hearing from the speakers, right? From the speakers that is actually playing in the concert or in the show. And we realize we can't belt with so much power like what those singers are doing. And if we did, we will probably be using a lot of energy and we'll start to sound strained and everything, like we are lifting some heavy weights, you know, in the gym, which is not what we're doing here. But the truth is, as long as you have accessed your high complete mixed voice vocal placement and you allow your high notes to sit there without dropping back into your low heavy chest voice placement, you are not going to use the amount of effort that you think you need to belt out those high notes, because now you are making use of physics, you are making use of resonance and standing waves to help you amplify that sound, which makes you sound louder, especially when you are singing through a microphone with those big ass speakers. Let me show you what I mean. Let's first take a look at Bruno Mars singing Versace on the floor live. Notice how Bruno Mars, he's belting it very loud and very forward when he is singing that song. Now, let's take a look at what happens when Bruno Mars takes away the microphone, takes away the loudspeaker, and he does it in carpool karaoke. Seems like you're ready for more. Let's just kiss till we're naked. Versace on the floor. Do you realize that suddenly his belt doesn't sound as loud as before? Compare again. And it's the same for girls, it's the same for Ariana Grande as well. Can you hear that for their live performances, when there's the mic and they sing into a mic with those speakers to amplify the sound? Do you realize that the sound is very loud and forward? But when Bruno Mars is singing in the car, or when Ariana Grande is singing in her small room, or it might be a $1 million room, I don't know, they are fucking rich people, it's almost as if they are actually keeping the sound inside without actually allowing it to come all the way out. Do you get what I mean here? And if you remember in my previous belt video, if you've watched that already, I said this thing, that when you're belting your high complete mixed voice vocal placement, your belt should feel just a little bit harder than a falsetto.
More Italianate classical or UC Berling-ish. And the head voice is actually, if you can understand this conceptually, it's actually pulling the chest voice up, and that's why it sounds, versus the chest voice being forced in.
Exactly.
And that's the beauty of a head voice pull.
Exactly.
It balances things out where you don't have to work so hard again.
Exactly.
Up there you can engage the head voice.
A lot of people couldn't understand that. What do you mean, like belt that feels like falsetto? Not exactly, but it feels a bit more effort than falsetto. Because the truth is this, just look at Bruno Mars, just look at Ariana Grande. Do they look like they are using a lot of effort? Actually no, because for them, it's a good chance that they feel that their belt is just a bit more effort than falsetto. And that is what also allows them to lean in and out of falsetto, belt, or rather I like to call it light compression, heavy compression, light compression, medium, heavy, medium, light. Easily when they are keeping all their high notes in their high placement. So just now when they are singing live, what is happening is not a forward and release the sound. It is they're keeping their sound inside, more inwards. They are compressing just a little bit more into that high placement, which gives you that illusion that Bruno Mars and Ariana Grande, they are pushing their voice forward. It is a very forward and outwards sound. It gives you the illusion, and that is what makes imitating singers a very dangerous thing for us, where we don't understand what is actually happening with regards to the placement and the live performance setup. A lot of times we try to keep our voice in the mask, which until today I have no idea what the fuck it means anyways. But back to whatever I'm saying, and we do that because we see a live performance of the singer, and that is what we hear. We hear a very forward sound. It's true, it is true, but what he's actually doing, if you take away the mic, if he's singing on stage, take away his mic, take away his speaker, what he's actually doing is he's actually keeping the sound in. He's keeping the high notes in his high placement, and then he compress into the high placement, like what he's doing in the carpool karaoke. And then when Bruno Mars sings it live on the stage, he compresses a bit more so that when the sound shoots right into the mic and gets amplified by the huge ass speakers, it gives you a really good illusion that the sound is very forward and frontal. Does that make sense? So if you want to imitate them, the carpool karaoke version, the version without a mic and speakers, is the version that you should be trying to imitate, because then it shows you the truth behind the technique of what Bruno Mars is doing. He's not keeping the sound very forward, very here. He's very inside. If you hear the carpool karaoke, but when it gets filtered through a mic with the huge ass speakers, then it creates an illusion that tells you that the sound is very loud and forward. And Bruno Mars is really not thinking, oh, let me support with my diaphragm more and let me push my sound forward. No, he's not thinking that. Only when you keep your high notes in your high placement, then you will have control over your high notes, like what Bruno Mars is doing there, what Ariana Grande is doing there. Because if you push your sound forward, you are not going to get any control. What you have to do is instead keep all your high notes in that high placement, and your vowels, the vowels formation, form the vowels in that high placement. And when you do, you will realize that belting high notes is not about pushing and squeezing and letting the sound come very forward. It is not about that, but rather it is about allowing your high notes to sit in that strong, high, resonant, complete mixed voice placement, and then compressing into the high placement to belt. Like what I've said about belting being a bit more effort than falsetto in my previous video about belting. But I think a lot of people didn't quite understand what I was trying to refer back to then, and that's why I created this video, to show you actually examples of what singers are actually doing. And look, you might think that you have already accessed your high complete mixed voice vocal placement by watching all my other videos. but there's a good chance you haven't. The content I'm producing are all actually very deep stuffs about vocal techniques that other people, they don't really talk about it. But once again, I can't just explain everything in a short YouTube video like this, and that is why I've created Complete Mixed Voice 1.0 online singing course, where it is a course that is over 5 hours long, and I go in depth into explaining exactly how you can access your high complete mixed voice vocal placement. So stop sitting around and praying that my YouTube videos are magic and they will help you access your high notes immediately. Don't get me wrong, of course my YouTube videos are fucking awesome. That is why you're watching up to now. But let me be honest, they're not magic. No matter how magical my videos look, they're not magic. If you can find a complete mixed voice placement with a simple YouTube video that I made, you have done it already by now, right? And there are a small group of people who can do it, and they've already done it. I've seen emails from students who have watched my YouTube video telling me, oh, they have found their high placement by watching my YouTube videos. There are people like this, but that is also because they naturally already have the high placement. You see, I just have to tell them to not use their low placement, right? Like, there's different kind of people watching my videos. People who have already have their high placement, I just have to tell them, oh, avoid the low placement, and then they know already. They just avoid it, and then they let all their high notes sit in the high placement, and then they don't have to buy my course. They naturally would have just found their high complete mixed voice vocal placement because it was actually there all along. They just have to not use the low placement. But if you don't have access to the high placement in the first place, then you need to actually follow a step-by-step method and process in order to access your high placement, which can be found in my course. And don't worry, you feel like, why can't I access my complete mixed voice vocal placement immediately like some other people who are watching YouTube videos like this? Don't worry, why? Because I didn't access my complete mixed voice placement immediately. It took me a lot of trial and error to finally access it and access it permanently. And then once that happens, then I have my high notes. Does that make sense? So if whatever I said today in this video makes sense to you, then go ahead, follow the link below and get the course. It's going to be worth it. And once you have watched the course and you come back and you rewatch all these YouTube videos that I've produced, then you'll truly unlock your high complete mixed voice vocal placement, even if you don't have it in the first place like me in the past. I'll see you in my next video, and I'm going to do some pull-ups today.